Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is ItsJackCole. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the video editing effects every editor should know about. Yes, and without further ado, we're pretty much just going to be jumping into 5 basic points, not anything too advanced, don't worry, that I think everybody pretty much should know how to use and utilize these 5 different video editing tactics and kind of skills. These are definitely important things to keep in mind when actually being a video editor, of course. If you're not subscribed to my channel, which is apparently, according to my stats, the vast majority of people, consider subscribing. I upload video production themed videos every single day, covering various different topics all around that kind of like a genre or field or whatever. But without further ado, like I said, let's get into the video. In terms of 5 different effects every editor should know, and overall just 5 different processes you want to run through. And if you keep all these 5 different points nice and tight, your edits will be looking super professional. First off is the titles. Titles is instantly, obviously because they're put at the front of your edit, this is instantly something that could be a huge turnoff for some people about your edit. If maybe you're not keeping them nice, it's not really smooth, it's not clean. Overall, keeping the titles nice and simple is great. Oftentimes, less is more, so if you're thinking your edit would look dope with the sick 3D text coming in everywhere, maybe if it's like some crazy action movie trailer or something like that, if that's what your edit is. But overall, make sure the titles and everything are nice and clean, or if they're not nice and clean, that they fit the genre that you're kind of creating in. So for example, my type of videos that I make, the vast majority of my video production is club movies. I'm actually just gonna have some nice, clean, simple white text on the screen. Obviously, again, I'm actually gonna be using Premiere for the examples to show on screen. However, these tactics can really be applied to any video editor or just really whatever software you're working with. These basic points are gonna actually help you out, of course. Now moving on to tip number 2, and overall just the second thing you should keep in mind, is coloring. Coloring obviously plays a huge part in the post-production of really amplifying your shots and creating them into a much more cinematic feel for everything like that. For example, you could have a very basic clip, it looks kind of flat, there's nothing too much popping to it, and then you actually go ahead and open up the coloring. For example, in Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro offers loads of amazing coloring. Honestly, if you're not already using Premiere Pro for your coloring and maybe you're using something else, I would strongly consider coming over to Premiere. Not only is it an amazing editor, but also the coloring is just insane. It's absolutely crazy. Better than any other program that's also a video editor, other than maybe like DaVinci Resolve or something like that. But coloring in Premiere, amazing. Coloring plays a huge part in making your edits more cinematic and overall just have a bigger feel. For example, there's loads of different presets, for example, in Premiere, where you can actually put various different cinematic looking presets on, and overall just tweaking the colors up and down, right, can actually bring out, obviously, like I said about 3 times now, a much more cinematic feel to your edit. Overall, no coloring process is going to be the same. You could do it directly to the clip, or personally, I usually make an adjustment layer and then apply to that, because then I can put obviously infinite clips below it that color correction on the adjustment layer will apply to, as long as it's above it. And overall, that's a good tactic. But there's no real set way to color correct anything, obviously, or color grade anything, right? Just have a look at your clip in mention, in question, or whatever, right? And just see what you can tweak up and down to make stuff pop. I really never even looked at too many color correction tutorials. I just kind of had fun learning color correction on my own by simply just playing with all the different like dials and shit like that, putting stuff up, putting stuff down, seeing what actually improved the image quality, seeing what kind of crushed certain colors in there or whatever. Overall, just play around with it and mess with Premiere, because honestly, it's quite a fun process to kind of like learn the coloring in that program, or at least I found that quite fun. So boom, coloring definitely extremely important. And moving on, I've actually done a whole nother video covering this topic because it's so important. Smooth slow motion. Far too many people just kind of settle with the basic, laggy, not very good slow motion. And I'm not gonna lie, the best slow motion is simply recording direct slow motion on your camera. I shoot on the Sony a6300, which is what I'm shooting this on right now. And that obviously shoots slow motion. 100%, nothing can really beat the actual built-in slow motion. That stuff is just 1,000 times better than any replicate you can create. Of course, there are loads of plugins, stuff like Twixtor and various things like that. I'm sure you've probably heard of that stuff. That provides very cool alternative to slow motion, which is definitely better than the basic default built-in slow motion that you would just kind of, for example, on Premiere, go to speed change or whatever, right? And just change the number there. For example, you'd make it 50 if you wanted it half the speed, which just ends up resulting in a super choppy slow motion effect. Definitely doesn't look nice by any stretch or meaning of that word at all. Overall, the best way you can do a slow motion in a program like Premiere is by actually going to the time remapping and simply penning in your own slow motion and then adding kind of like a curve so it gradually goes into it instead of just chopping right away, which kind of results in that choppy look. But overall, slow motion is 100% best when you do it on your camera, or obviously, like I said, in this other pen tool kind of way. Definitely not just going to the speed change or whatever. You do have to do time remapping. That's going to result in a much smoother slow motion effect. Or like I said, Twixtor is actually pretty good, to be fair. I used Twixtor for so long. It's not the most professional in the world, but who cares really, to be honest, because it looks very, very good. Moving on to the next little thing that can actually make your edits much smoother, much nicer, transitions. Obviously, transitions actually is funny enough. This can go either to be something that every editor needs or that every editor doesn't, because it really depends on how well you do the transitions. A bad transition is going to entirely ruin your edit. A transition that's too obvious but isn't good enough is obviously going to ruin your edit as well. In terms of transitions, the best way to do these things is the more subtle, the better. For example, simple little fades. A fade in is super nice, right? And in a program like Premiere, you can do that super easy by just right-clicking the front of the clip and literally just putting in the default transition, right? So that's pretty nice. That puts a default fade onto your clip, which definitely adds a little bit of something. Overall, transition-wise, if you are gonna be using some intricate transitions, I would use them super simple, like I said at the beginning, nice and simple, or go into depth and recreate an actual in-depth good transition. For example, I've put up various different tutorials on my channel of actual transitions. Go through and actually spend the time on recreating or just creating, actually not recreating, a really nice transition effect where you actually edit it yourself instead of just using a pre-made transition. But finally on the list, in terms of things that's going to be amping up your edit, music and audio. So music and sound effects. Now, whether you are creating a World War II trailer edit or something and you need to put the gun sounds in, or and like the dramatic music and shit like that, or if you're creating a YouTube video simple like this and you notice I've got a little bit of a backing track and also I've got like a sound effect, and it's a pretty good default sound effect for all my transitions. Definitely adding a sound effect to your transitions is an extremely cool thing. You can, of course, have boom when you have like a slide effect or whatever type of effect your transition is. You can set that transition to obviously to just the duration of your sound effect once you've trimmed your sound effect up, and then you could have a very, very cool intro kind of sequence where it goes like swipes on, plays, and then swipes off. And also if you put some kind of music that themes your edit as well. Overall, guys, that has been video editing effects that every editor should know and should be utilizing in every single edit of theirs. Overall, thank you guys for watching the video. I've been JackCole. Subscribe for more videos like this. Have a nice day and goodbye.